Bill Clinton's Whitewater partner, James McDougal, gets 3 years in prison and praise from the prosecutor for cooperating. A growing movement to reduce estate taxes that wipe out the American dreams of farmers and small businesses as swiftly as death. And Tiger Woods, more than just a master golfer, hope for a whole new generation of young athletes who see a game in a new way.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. James McDougal, the Arkansas developer who was President Clinton's partner in Whitewater, is headed for jail. But his stay won't be nearly as long as it might have been. His decision to cooperate with the special prosecutor in the case is the major factor. What does that mean for President Clinton? Here's NBC's Jim Miklashevsky.
All right, I feel a little bit like I'm...
Convicted on 18 separate counts in the Whitewater investigation, James McDougal faced a maximum 84 years in prison. But in exchange for McDougal's cooperation with Whitewater investigators, a federal judge in Little Rock handed down a more lenient sentence. 3 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. McDougal was also ordered to repay more than $4 million to the federal government. But in an interview with NBC Dateline's Stone Phillips, McDougal made a stunning revelation.
Did you feel abandoned by the president when he did not offer a pardon?
I wasn't so much concerned he had abandoned me. I felt he'd abandoned Susan.
Your ex-wife?
I really thought he would pardon her. That was a big factor in my decision.
And if the president wasn't going to protect an old friend, you weren't going to protect him?
I just got sick and tired of lying for the fella, you know.
That could be big trouble for President Clinton. McDougal has reportedly told investigators that back in 1986, Governor Bill Clinton was involved in an illegal $300,000 federally backed loan. President Clinton has denied that under oath, and it's exactly opposite of what McDougal first told investigators. But independent counsel Kenneth Starr told reporters McDougal has provided Whitewater investigators with new information and new documents to back it up.
It has led us to both documents and it has led us to witnesses. That information has come to us that was previously unknown to us.
McDougal says his personal credibility doesn't matter, that the new evidence he provided investigators will speak for itself.
I'm not peddling truth or asking people to believe anything. I have simply responded, and I think that the documentary evidence will substantiate anything I have said to the independent counsel.
Privately, White House officials say McDougal's credibility does matter, that it's his word against the president. But tonight, there's worried silence and no comment. Clinton aides admit they have no idea what McDougal turned over to investigators. Jim Miklashevsky, NBC News, the White House.
You can see the McDougal entire interview tonight on Dateline NBC. That's actually tomorrow night on Dateline NBC. Also tonight in Washington, Attorney General Janet Reno formally announced she has decided not to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate charges of campaign donation irregularities at the White House and within the Democratic Party. In a military courtroom in Maryland today, some very graphic testimony in the rape case of Delmar Simpson, the Army sergeant from the Aberdeen Training Center, who was accused by several trainees in his command. More now from NBC's Ed Vrabel.
Today, 4 of the 21 women who have accused Simpson of sexual misconduct took the stand in his court-martial at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland. The first witness, a 22-year-old Army reservist, describing how, as a 20-year-old trainee, she had gone to Simpson's office to complain that he was harassing her. Simpson, she said, laughed, closed the door, forced her onto a bed in another room, and, holding her hands, allegedly raped her. Cross-examined by defense attorney Frank Spinner, she admitted to having consensual sex with 2 other drill sergeants, but insisted Simpson had forced her, that she had cried and protested but didn't resist forcibly out of fear. Simpson, married, the father of 4, is charged with 19 rapes involving 6 women. He's been in jail for 8 months, accused of indecent acts and assaults, battery, and threats made to keep women from making accusations. 58 charges in all. Just 1 rape conviction could send Simpson to jail for life. He spoke with Dateline NBC's Len Cannon.
Sir, I did not rape anyone, sir. Surprised by the charges? Surprised, sir? astounded, really.
But today, another of his accusers said she too was a 20-year-old trainee when Simpson, in her words, forced her to lie on a couch in his office, put his hand over her mouth, pulled down her shorts, and raped her. She told the military jury of 5 men and 1 woman she didn't report the alleged rape immediately because she feared Simpson would harm her. Simpson admits to having what he calls consensual sex with 11 trainees under his command, including 5 who say he raped them.
Do you feel like a criminal?
I feel I'm being treated like one, sir.
Simpson's case stands out because he is charged with so many sex offenses, and some believe the Army is purposely making his case high profile to answer criticism that it has not been tough enough on sexual misconduct. Ed Rabel, NBC News, the Pentagon.
When NBC Nightly News continues, are your taxes done yet? Tomorrow night is the day. Tonight, we'll take a look at one of the biggest tax bites, estate taxes. Why you can't take it with you. Also tonight, NBC News in depth. The strange phenomenon of false memory syndrome. Ruin families, ruin lives.
We lost everything. We lost our family. And I lost my job, I lost my credentials, I lost my name.
When therapists create memories of childhood trauma that never happened. That's our in-depth report tonight. Later, making history. Now, will this young champion change the game for a whole new generation? The President and the First Lady, like so many Americans, waited until the last minute to file their 1996 tax returns. But unlike the rest of America, the Clintons reported an income of more than $1 million, almost $750,000 of that from royalties for Hillary Clinton's book, It Takes a Village. She's donated her share to charity. The Clintons ended up with a tax bill of just under $200,000. And even as he was totaling up his taxes, the president was offering a few ideas for making the whole filing process somehow simpler. Among them, raise the amount a dependent can make before having to file a tax return. Allow a parent to claim as a dependent a child who lives at home more than a half a year. And make it easier for taxpayers to avoid the penalties for failing to pay their taxes. He did not, however, offer significant cuts in taxes like the inheritance tax. That revenue, after all, helps reduce the budget deficit. But in our regular look at the family tonight, NBC's Mike Jensen reports the inheritance tax now has a lot of enemies and almost no friends.
After Barbara Fay's mother died, the tax man came calling to collect more than $1 million in inheritance taxes on their family horse farm. Thousands of farmers and small business owners face huge death taxes each year.
I've never been able to quite understand where they have the right to tax you on something just because someone dies. And that's basically what they're penalizing you because you've lost a loved one.
This is the check you ended up mailing to the IRS?
That's correct. 1.3 million. The state was a little over $300,000.
This is the farm Barbara Fay's family used to own. 200 acres, 70 horses. These flowers were planted by her mother.
I had worked hard to maintain it and to have something for my children to grow up on and my grandchildren to come and visit.
But she was forced to sell the farm to pay the taxes. Now she works the overnight shift at a farm a few miles away, keeping an eye on someone else's mares and foals. She's typical of small business owners, often worth $5 to $10 million, which sounds like a lot, but usually is tied up in land or equipment. That's what Kennard Campbell, who runs a septic tank business, is worried about.
The estate taxes, if something would happen to me and my wife, would probably use up probably 55% of the estate, causing my family to have to sell off the property, therefore probably putting the family bankrupt.
His son Douglas, who hopes to carry on the family business, says they've worked hard for their money.
We've watched things progress from not having, for example, running water inside our own home until I was 6 years old.
Senator Richard Lugar says people like the Campbells and Barbara Fay deserve better. He wants to eliminate the death tax, or at least reduce it.
Death brings not only sorrow to the family, it may bring the end of the whole enterprise of the family, plus the jobs of all who were dependent upon it.
A lot of experts think the death tax will be reduced, maybe as early as this year, in time to help Kennard Campbell and his family, but too late for Barbara Fay, who once had a stable full of thoroughbreds and now is lucky to have a pony for her grandson.
You see the ponies?
Mike Jensen, NBC News, Upperville, Virginia.
When we come back, NBC News in Depth tonight, what if your grown child was absolutely convinced you had abused her? The frightening world of false memory syndrome. In Depth tonight. But first, from CNBC, let's take a look at what happened on Wall Street today. NBC News in Depth tonight, the phenomenon that is known in the scientific community as false memory syndrome. It happens to hundreds of people in this country every year. The vast majority of them women who during the course of therapy discover repressed memories of being abused as children. But it turns out those memories are lies of things that never actually happened, false memories. The effect on families can be devastating. Can it be fixed? Here's NBC science correspondent Robert Bazell.
Nadine Kuhl believed many terrible things about herself. In court, she said she thought her parents sexually abused her, that she suffered from multiple personalities, and had actually killed children.
Yes. I wanted to die. I wanted to kill myself.
But she is now certain none of those things happened. She says a psychiatrist implanted the false memories.
It took quite a while for me to realize that my parents didn't do these things. And I didn't have all these personalities. And I didn't kill babies. And I didn't kill children.
Kuhl sued the psychiatrist. Last month, he settled for $2.4 million while admitting no liability. But how can people come to remember things, even horrible things, that never happened? To study how false memories can be created, researchers here at the University of Washington take normal volunteers and try to persuade them that they had experiences in childhood that, in fact, they never had. Psychologist Jackie Pickerel asks volunteer Sarah Carter about a disturbing childhood event that Carter's family is certain never happened.
Do you remember the time that you got lost in the grocery store? Your grandma sent you to look for a package of cookies.
No, I don't remember that.
Pickerel persists. She makes up some more details. An older woman brought Sarah to the manager, who paged her grandmother died. At that point, Sarah starts to think that it happened.
Yeah, I think he said, is there a Grandma Dot? Yeah.
2 weeks later, Sarah is even more convinced the story is true. Then she's told it's a false memory.
Well, in fact, you never were lost in the store.
Really? Wow.
Professor Elizabeth Loftus, who is in charge of the experiments, says that false memories created during therapy can be especially dangerous.
I don't believe these therapists are deliberately trying to suggest false memories. I believe they look at a set of symptoms, they decide in their mind that childhood abuse is at the root of these symptoms. They feel it's their job to dig out the memories of this abuse.
But sometimes, attempts to dig out memories create false ones. Beth Rutherford sought therapy from a church counselor because she was depressed about treating dying patients.
My therapist convinced me that from the ages of 7 through 14, that I had been sexually molested by my father over those years, that my father had impregnated me twice.
Her father, Tom, was an ordained minister in the same church where he taught Sunday school.
I lost my job, I lost my credentials, I lost my name being a minister, my reputation and credibility.
The Rutherfords sued the therapist and their church. A gynecological examination showed that Beth was still a virgin. Medical records showed her father could not have impregnated her because he had a vasectomy when she was 3. The church and therapist settled for $1 million without admitting liability. Tom got his ministry back. While no one denies there are many horrible instances of childhood sexual abuse, stories like Beth Rutherford's show that sometimes the allegations, with all their terrible consequences, can be based on events which never happened, based on false memories. Robert Bazell, NBC News, Seattle.
When we come back, the latest on the search for that missing A-10 Thunderbolt and its young pilot. also caught in the crossfire. One American family far from home searching